Years ago, when I was studying in Grahamstown, I was converting my diploma into a degree. We came across, there was 3 of us who were roommates in a flat that belonged to the Uniting Presbyterian Church of South Africa. And we found ourselves that we needed to make sure that we provide sustenance in the form of food to us. And many of us were mummy boys, so we didn't really know how to cook. I was more fortunate because my mom made sure that she taught her kids how to at least make a toast. But we came across this amazing invention called 2-minute noodles. Okay? And this was the only flavor at that date, was a cheese flavor. There was I think it was cheese and tomato. That was the only 2 flavors. Now you get lots of different flavors. And it soon became our go-to meal. I mean, it literally takes 2 minutes to make these noodles. And at that time we didn't have a microwave, so we boiled it in a pot. And then as it boils, you just put in the flavor. And you could add in, maybe take some sausage and cut the sausage in, and some tomatoes, or you take a tin of corn and put it here and spoof it up. And we used to have these 2-minute noodles every day, except on the weekend. We used to make a toast with beans, put the 2-minute noodles on top of it, and put like tomato sauce or whatever. I mean, that was now the meal on the weekend. I mean, the 2-minute noodles was instant, and it literally satisfied our needs as single guys studying for the ministry. Who has time to cook, hey? But soon our body was telling us that 2-minute noodles is not the only thing we should eat, and we had to phone our respective moms and ask for some recipes, and we started cooking. I was known for my killer spaghetti bolognese. I wasn't using 2-minute noodles, I was using the proper spaghetti, so much so that it's my kid's favorite. By the way, the apple didn't fall far from the tree, because Ben can live on this alone. You just give him 2-minute noodles, and his favorite is the chicken flavor or the cheese flavor. My question for you today is, are you like the Israelites, settling for 2-minute noodles because it's instant and it's quick? Or are you going to wait for God's provision and get the manna that comes out of the ground, out of provision of God? So quick recap, what we've been doing is we've been traveling in the land between. We know that the children of Israel left Egypt, and after a while, Pharaoh said, okay, you guys can go. The 10 plagues happened, and the Israelites, led by Moses, go off to the promised land. But they find themselves wandering for 40 years. Wandering, and in that wandering, there was a lot of complaining. And we looked at the complainings of the Israelites and the lessons that we get out of this land in between. And what we've been doing is looking at the Israelites in the land in between and asking ourselves the same questions, the same lessons of our land in between. I mean, the last 18, 19 months, I don't know about you, but it feels like a land in between. It feels like we're wandering in the desert, isn't it? I mean, we know that there is some people are saying post-COVID, because, we're more relaxed. We in South Africa on level 1, international travels have opened, and so on and so on. But we still have to wear the masks. We still have to sit a distance from each other. We still don't know if to hug a person, give them an elbow, fist bump, whatever. And I don't know if you've ever seen now people who are greeting each other, they're sort of like... and they don't know what to do. Okay, that's a land in between. That's where we are. We for now, we've come familiar. For now, I've put my studies on hold. For now, my travels plans are on hold. For now, that is the land in between. But God provides food and water in a desert, doesn't He? But it's not the 2-minute noodles. It's not the 2-minute noodles that they were used to, and they complained to God and to Moses, and they say, why did you take us all the way here? At least we knew we had 2-minute noodles in Egypt. And what are we getting now? This thing called manna, which means, actually literally means, what is this? Because they didn't have a term for it. They didn't know what it was. So they phrased it manna, which means, what is this? It didn't really look like they expected, or that what they wanted, this traveling through the wilderness. So how would we have written Moses' story, or our story for that matter, if we had a chance? We would take out all the uncomfortable things, isn't it? If you had to rewrite the story, all the parts that didn't go as we should have gone, or as we would have liked them to go. Basically, we would have taken all the parts where we couldn't be in control, getting exactly what we wanted and when we wanted it. If we're honest, we would have chosen the 2-minute noodles instead of the other stuff that we had to wait upon God. We would have chosen the instant food if we were to rewrite the story instead of the manna in a desert and water coming out of a rock. And why is that important? Why should we even care about it? Adam Grant, a psychologist, says that the mental scale goes from, on the one hand, depression, and on the other hand is flourishing. And he doesn't use the biblical language that we are using, but basically he writes that many of us aren't experiencing the bondage of Egypt or depression through whatever it is that we're going through in this land in between. And we're not experiencing the flourishing of the promised land. I mean, think about it. Where are we? Where are we? And we asked that question last Sunday on the mat. Where are you? Where are you in this land in between? How many of your dreams and hopes for the promised land, whatever it was, have been put on hold? How many of us have lost direction? How many of us have lost energy? What's the point? Because we don't know. How many people have made arrangements and they're saying, well, I'm not sure if I should or shouldn't. What if December comes and they lock us down again? Hey, have you been there? Is that the internal dialogue that you're having with yourself? So we're finding ourselves in this land between, which he calls languishing. So there's flourishing on the one side, there's depression on the one side, flourishing on the other side. But the land between, in his psychological way, he calls it languishing. Now, languishing is a no-man land where we lack energy, motivation, and vision. Sounds familiar? I mean, come on, guys. I know I've lacked vision for this church. I didn't know what to do. I still don't know exactly what to do. The church is not the same that I've known for the last 23 years as a minister. I just look at your faces and I see that it's not the same. And it's not just me. There's a lot of ministers in this town, in this country, in the world. You are going through the same lack of vision, lack of motivation, lack of energy. So if you are languishing, what are you hungry for in the land between? What are you praying for God to provide in this land between? That is, if you are praying at all, because I know people who have stopped praying. You have stopped praying. I know people who have stopped coming to church. They will give you a myriad of excuses. None of them are valid. But they stop coming to church, stop praying. They stop following in the way of the Lord because they think, what's the point? Because they're finding themselves languishing in this land in between. And maybe you want God to provide direction. You want the exact plan and you want it now. Maybe you want God to provide courage and wisdom or patience for a hard decision that you need to make. Maybe in this land between you want God to provide healing. Physical, emotional, relational. How many people have lost loved ones to this land between that we find ourselves, that has come crushing into our lives unexpectedly, and not just our life, but a worldwide. Or perhaps you need strength and energy to preserve, to go through this uncertainty. Maybe God's provision will look exactly how you envision it and in the timing that you wanted, but maybe not. In the land between, the desert, the Israelites wanted to be in control of what God provided and how and when they wanted the 2-minute noodles. But God had another idea. So we're going to take a look this morning at Exodus 16, 11 to 20, and then 23 to 29. These are God's instructions to how He's going to provide food. Starting in verse 16, this is what He says. This is what the Lord God has commanded. Everyone is together as much as they needed. Take an omer for each person that you have in your tent. The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much and some gathered little. And when they measured it by the omer, now an omer is about 2 kilograms, okay, solid kilograms, not liquid. So when they measured by the omer about 2 kilograms, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered as much as they needed. And Moses says to them, no one is to keep any of it till morning. I can imagine the Israelites saying, but what if there is not going to be anything in the morning? But what if we're still hungry and we want to have some for breakfast? But what if? I can imagine the Israelite going on at Moses with the what ifs. How many of us have heard ourselves saying what if in this land in between? Carries on and says, however, some of them paid no attention to Moses. No surprise there. They kept part of it till morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Moses said to them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is going to be a day of Sabbath rest. Now this Sabbath rest is another thing that requires us to trust in the ability of God and to trust God in it. And goes on and says, to be a Sabbath day rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. This is one of those little things that happens differently in the Sabbath for them. Because this time they are allowed to keep it. And goes on and says, so they saved it until morning. And Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. And he says, it is today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none together. Nevertheless, some people went out on the seventh day together. And Moses said no. So what did they do? They do it anyway. But they found nothing. They found nothing because Moses said there will be nothing. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. This is about trust and control, isn't it? I mean, God has said instructions, and immediately we see that they disobey it. This is about a trust and control issue. God doesn't make any sense sometimes to them or to us. He's not giving us the 2-minute noodles that we want, this instant gratification kind of thing. So we want to do it in our own way, don't we? Nicole Sash once said, the need for control is just fear in fancy clothes. Just fear in fancy clothes, need to control. What are we afraid of? What do you fear? Desperately grasping and trying to control whatever it is. The Israelites don't really trust God's character, isn't it? They're afraid that God would not really provide for them. And as I said last time, it's easy for us to go down and look at the story and judge them. But how many of us in this land between for the last 18, 19 months, we've done a similar thing? How many of us? It's a question you need to answer for yourself. I don't know about you, but one of the lessons that COVID has taught me is that I'm not in control. I'm not in control. And I needed, and I found myself needing to trust God daily for my life, for my wife's life, for my kids' life, and the decisions that we have made almost 2 years ago that we were going to implement. I realized as a minister that I am not in control of this church. He is. And as much as things were taken away from me in doing ministry, like today, there's no electricity, so we had to come up with different ideas. I'm not in control. But I learned to trust in Him. And as I allowed myself to trust in Him and for Him to take that control, the rewards were so outnumbered. Because I needed to learn to trust God daily. This lesson of daily dependence on God is one that I think He has to teach us over and over and over again, just like He did with the Israelites. Lamentation 3:22-23 says, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, O Lord. So there are three lessons I think that we can learn about God's provision in this land between. The first one is that God's provision often looks different to what we envision. Recognizing the provision of God starts with trusting the character of God. When we trust His provision, we acknowledge that He is a good God, that He sees what we don't see, that He knows what we don't know. He's good at being God. That's why He's God. And He will feed us better than a 2-minute noodle. Better than a 2-minute noodle. N.E.F. Downs says, if you're hungry, don't let the internet feed you. So what is your source of provision to address your hunger? Where are you getting your 2-minute noodles? Are you trying to satisfy hunger for affirmation on social media? Maybe a desire for power that you are trying to satisfy through being a workaholic. Or your hunger for courage and you're trying to get it through whatever external means. To sort of numb the pain or try and make sense of something. Mark Peterson asked the question, what percentage of your thoughts are regurgitations of the news you are watching on social media that you are following? And what percentage of your thoughts are a revelation from the Word of God? How many of us throughout this land between that we find ourselves in the last 18, 19 months have been feeding ourselves not with the Word of God? That's why there's so much confusion going around. Should I? Shouldn't I? Must I? Mustn't I? But if we follow and we spend time in the Word, then we become familiar with His voice, with His ways, with His character. And this is convicting for me. In the Lord's Word, in John chapter 14:27, He says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I don't give it to you as the world gives." And in Isaiah 55:8-9, He says, "For my thoughts are my thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And that will only be comforting and encouraging to us when we are sure of the loving character of God. But His provision often looks different to the way that we envision it. So that's the first lesson we can learn in the land between. The second lesson of provision from the land between is that the provision of God is about the way and the weight as much as the what. God is committed to provide in a way and in a way that you need to be free. And if we understand the first lesson, then it will be easier for us to follow the second lesson. God provided for the Israelites freedom from slavery, but not in a way or in the timing that it was easy. It wasn't 2 minutes. As a matter of fact, it wasn't because of God that they ended up wandering 40 years. Because He wanted to provide from freedom from more than just physical slavery. Exodus 13:17-18 says, "When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the roads through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. It would have taken them less time to get to the promised land if they went that way. So why? Because for God says, if they faced war, they might change their mind and return to Egypt. So God leads the people around by the desert road towards the Red Sea. God is committed more to our character development than to our comfort. Let me say that again. God is committed more to our character development than He's committed to how comfortable we are. How often we want the fast lane, where it will be easier to pass rather than wait for Him to provide something that we might not be aware of that we actually need. In the land between, you learn to wait. Most of us are waiting on something in the land between, isn't it? Holly Frederick says this: what seems like a pointless, painful waiting room can be God's most productive workroom. Isn't that beautiful? Now, we've all been in a waiting room, right? We've all been in a waiting room. I remember when Michelle had to have her tonsils out, and I was in this waiting room for her to go in. There was a screen, and it actually showed who was going in front of her, because it was on that day there were tonsils and stuff that you can move in your nose and ears and all that kind of stuff. So there was quite a queue, because this guy was coming from East London to Queenstown for just that day. And I remember there was like the names, so Michelle's name was there, and it was, first it was red, and it was orange, and then it eventually turned to like a really bright green, which meant that she was not going in. And I was in this waiting room. Imagine how wonderful it would be if we had a screen that was telling us where we are in this waiting room of life, in this land in between. Huh? Sort of like flashing green at you. You're about, your dreams come true, your prayers are happening, this is it, I get ready, you're about to enter into the promised land. Isn't that would be wonderful, but it's not. And if you think about it, the work that we often do while we wait is often what kind of work? Heart work, soul work, inside kind of stuff that requires patience and obedience and discernment and cooperation with God. How often do we try this on our own and we run ahead of everything, only to find ourselves going back to God and clinging to God? Clinging is a work of waiting in the land between. Realizing that you can't walk in the wilderness by yourself. But we cling and we say, Lord, help me to see you. Show me today, for every second. Lord, help me to focus on your purpose and not my problem. So the provision of God is about the way and the wait as much as the what. The third lesson of God's provision in this land between is that His provision in the past can fuel your faith for the future. That's how you get to know the character of God. In Exodus 16:33, it says, so Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to keep it for generations to come. Because in the Ark of the Covenant, if you had to open the Ark of the Covenant, you would see the jar and the manna for generations to come. Now the word remember is found 240 times in the Old and the New Testament. And one of my favorite places that it's found is in Joshua chapter 4, verse 1 to 3 and then 6 to 8. It says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones. 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you, and put them down and place them, saying, tonight, in the future, your children will ask you what these stones mean. Tell them that the flow of the Jordan River was cut off before the covenant of the Lord when we crossed the Jordan River. The water of the Jordan was cut off. These stones are a memorial to you. So wherever you are, like Moses and the Israelites, in the land between, God sees you. He loves you. He sees what you don't see. He knows what you don't know. He's good and faithful, and He doesn't play games. He will provide for you in a way that may not always be comfortable, but the way He provides will be better than a 2-minute noodle. The way He provides will be better than something instant and quick and easy. So this is how we're going to end. You're going to make it practical. Just now, Tammy is going to, not yet, is going to play a song. And it's a well-known hymn that you know it. And listen to the words. And when you're ready, I want you to come up. And I want you to take a 2-minute noodle bag. I only got 30. You're less than 30.
21.
You're 21. Great. So there's enough for every person. Don't be choosy on what flavor you want. Just take one, okay? Take a 2-minute noodle bag. But then as soon as you finish, I want you to take a stone, a pebble. And sometime today, whether you're with your family or not, I want you to write on a pebble, what is it that you are thankful to God for in this land in between that we've been in, that you've been in? Where have you seen Him provide manna, water from the rock? Where has He split the sea so that you can cross on dry land, or cut off the Jordan River so that you can move? When has He guided you by day with a pillar of smoke, and by night with a pillar of fire? When has He provided you meat when you were sick and tired of this manna? Because if you think about it, you will find an answer, and write it down. And put it somewhere in the house that you can often see it, because it will be a reminder to you of how God is with you in the land between. To whatever time it is that we're going to finally cross to the promised land, whether it's next year or the year after that, Lord, let it be next year. But let us be a reminder that He's not a God of the 2-minute noodles, but He's a God of the 12 stones. So write that down. But more than that, if you feel like you need to pray, then allow me to lay hands on you. Yes, to lay hands on you. I've sanitized my hands. I've sanitized myself. I sanctified myself before the Lord. Allow me to lay hands on you and pray right now for your land in between. So we're going to play the song, and when you're ready, come collect, get a stone, and if you want me to pray, then I will stand on that side. Amen?
Amen.
Right.